So, I completed the story of Red Dead Redemption 2 recently, and wow. Well, those are my thoughts. That's my review, everyone. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, so I have a lot of different thoughts about this game, and it's taken me a while to synthesize them into something coherent. And so I don't sound like the kid who didn't read the chapter and just decided to make up the report on the spot.
It has horses, and you shoot stuff, and I like the guy Arthur.
A few things to know about the structure of this video is that my goal is to give a spoiler-free, general review of the game. I will talk about the key aspects of the game's production, such as the visuals, sound, gameplay, and writing, as well as give my thoughts on how I believe these things come together overall. So it should be noted that we don't give numbered reviews, but rate things on a scale of trash to treasure, trash being the lowest and treasure being the highest. Also, when I refer to the first game, I'm referring to Red Dead Redemption, not Red Dead Revolver, the actual first game in the series. Anyway, after dozens of hours of play, here's a Study Lounge review for Red Dead Redemption 2. There is an attention to detail that follows through most aspects of this game, and the visual attention is among its best parts. You've no doubt seen the video of people showing picturesque cliffside scenery, the sprawling forest, or emphasizing the quality of snow textures by making a giant penis in the snow.
Bruh.
Yes, this game is visually stunning. The landscapes invoke a sense of awe as you ride through the beautifully crafted mountainsides in Big Valley of West Elizabeth, or the lush forests in Beaver Hollow. Hell, even the marshes of Lemoyne evoke a sense of murky mystery as you ride through the heavy bayou air. Animals and people in the game are also well designed. You've probably heard that a male horse's genitals have a realistic reaction to the temperature, but it's bigger than that.
Oh, okay, I see what you did there.
The expressions of characters are spot on and lend to storytelling through the full gamut of emotion and reaction. With good lip syncing used in and out of cutscenes, even when you approach strangers in the game and initiate dialogue, each character's lips are moving. As you ride through the wilds of the world, you will constantly find fauna and fowl jaunting in zigzags through forest desire paths and soaring through blue skies. The ragdoll physics used in the game are top-notch. Other shooters that use ragdoll physics often make objects feel weightless after they've died. But in Red Dead Redemption 2, characters fall and react to every hit and shot in a way that makes you feel as though there is a natural impact to every bullet, every punch, every stampede, lift, throw, fall in the game. These things, along with the classic spaghetti western visual callbacks like the classic clutch and tumble, make the world come alive through tight, realistic animation. But the animations for some things can look odd, such as characters magically sliding into position for certain follow-up animations, or whatever this is.
Go. Giddy up. Yep. Giddy up. Yep.
I realize this may seem like a nitpick, but in a game with so much polish and so many seemingly trivial areas, a bit of extra polish and more crucial ones would be nice. You'll see that this is a recurring theme of the issues in Red Dead Redemption 2, but more on this later. So I really love the sound design in this game. The music is phenomenal and well set to different scenes and missions. The nature sounds are amazingly placed with great use of environment to tie their relation to your experience, and the voice acting is spot on. For the soundtrack itself, Woody Jackson, I salute you, sir. Ennio Morricone's influence is felt as the soundtrack stays true to the classic Western sound while also experimenting with new aspects such as blues for distinct moments in the story to do the work of setting scenes that evoke emotion and drive narrative through sound. Jackson uses stabbing brass and higher pitched string anchored by an ever-present and steady bass to create both tension and catharsis throughout the game, up until its very peak. His skilled use of silence and minimalistic sound at parts also serves to set tone. The juxtaposition of silence and low sound with explosive percussion and rhythm at important moments in missions helps create the flow of explosive, rising action climax, and resolution that is crucial to the game's narrative, adding ample enjoyment to Red Dead 2's experience. This soundtrack easily became one of my favorites, and I highly recommend anyone who enjoys well-orchestrated soundtracks purchase this one. The voice acting was also stellar, with Rob Wiedoff, Benjamin Byron Davis, and Stephen J. Palmer reprising the roles of John Marston, Dutch, and Bill Williams respectively. Roger Clark, who plays Arthur, delivers a performance that draws you into the game and causes you to feel for him in the heat of the ups and downs of the game's story arc. In the same way that Wiedoff delivered a performance that set John apart in the first game, Clark does the same for Arthur, giving him a distinct, relatable voice. The chemistry of the cast is shown well in the many side dialogues that you can overhear in camps, or one-off companion missions. Other notable performances include Alex McKenna as Sadie Adler and Peter Blomquist as Michael Bell. Ambient sounds and weapon effects are well placed in the game, with a real sense of depth and distance created from gunshots and sounds that fade with distance or echo from the surroundings. That said, I have noticed some issues at times with the way sounds are layered or implemented, causing certain sounds to just not work. There were moments where the startup dialogue of some quests were completely silent, and all I could see was characters miming words. This wasn't common, but it happened enough to be noticed throughout the game. For the most part, nothing was lost in these moments beside immersion, but it was notable. Of all of the great parts of Red Dead Redemption 2, the area in which I found the most flaws was gameplay. Mechanically, the movement in the game seems a bit clunky at times, and there's a bit of input lag in game which makes things awkward in important moments. I should also take this opportunity to talk about the dreaded shooting mechanics. Actually, I didn't have a problem with the shooting. I've heard from multiple people who complained about the game's aim being a problem, and not knowing how to fix it, requiring videos be created to look it up, but I never had a problem with aiming in the game. I never changed any of the aiming settings, even the look sensitivity was default throughout the entire game. I'm including this here though to note that while I don't have an issue with this, many people did, so it should probably be considered a part of the review of gameplay. But if we want to talk about bad mechanics though, let's talk about horse mechanics. The horse mechanics in this game can be really stupid or smart depending on, RNG? Typically, as you are riding your horse, the horse seems to be fairly intelligent for the sake of self-preservation, exploiting all of its pathfinding, dodging every obstacle, penetrating the bureaucracy. BAM! They trip over a rock. This is a huge momentum breaker when you are in the middle of an intense mission or chase, and all of a sudden, a rock that your horse should be able to traverse and has before drops it in a matter of seconds, throwing you meters ahead in the process. In some cases, it also kills your horse. Granted, I know this isn't so common to the point of rage quitting, but it did happen frequently enough that I could fill 10 seconds worth of horse crashes from my own gameplay. Which I will do now. The user interface in the game maintains the aesthetic created in the first game, retaining grayscale and sepia tones with red highlights, because of course, it is Red Dead Redemption. Now, I personally like the idea of using the old-time catalogs as the shop menus, but in terms of navigating, it tended to slow things down significantly when you were moving through it, as the controls weren't the most intuitive. There's one button used to cycle through the items on a page, and then a completely different set of buttons to move to the next page. The item selection buttons don't automatically turn the pages when you reach the end or the beginning of a page, and that requires you to manually turn the page with a separate turn page button. It becomes fairly annoying later in the game when you are just trying to get in and get out of a shop looking for a specific item, and the shop has 8 different categories and subcategories for each. Speaking of interfaces, many portions of the main menu is atrociously constructed. I constantly had to retrace the steps of getting in and out of certain menus, trying to find where to save the game or load the game, And even after finishing the main story, I don't know if there's a way to restart from a checkpoint without dying, or specifically planting dynamite to kill myself. There's so much shuffling, switching, going in and out of different menus, it becomes tedious after a while. The thing I want to stress here is not that there is so much to navigate through, it's just my frustration with the way you have to navigate through it. One positive, though, is that when something is added to the compendium or the journal, a notification pops up, allowing you to go straight to it, without having to navigate through all of the windows. And you are able to back all the way out of a menu by holding down the exit button. Also, this bounty system can die in a hole. Even minor infractions seem to elicit lethal responses from the law. Something as simple as turning my horse and accidentally nudging an NPC
who was idiotically walking into my horse to begin with.
There was one time in particular I was running down the street, I bumped into a person, no weapons drawn, and was charged with assault. A mere $5 bounty. No need for alarm, right?
Wrong.
The police showed up in force because I guess it was a slow day in Saint Denis and proceeded to chase me all the way to a county line, firing at me all the way. Clearly, out of self-defense, I proceeded to fire back, killing multiple pursuing officers. By the time I escaped their pursuit, my bounty was nearly $250. Needless to say, I'm no longer welcome in Saint Denis. Overall, I still enjoyed the gameplay, but the issues in it were distinctly noticeable throughout the course of the game and actually caused frustration at significant parts. Now I reiterate, while this is the worst part, it is by no means a bad part of the game. So what can I say about this story that hasn't already been said? It's phenomenal, with few issues from me. Red Dead Redemption 2 places you in the role of Arthur Morgan, a top member of Dutch van der Linde's gang in the year of 1889, a full 12 years before the first Red Dead Redemption. Specifically, the game allows you to play through the downfall of the van der Linde gang following a pivotal ferry heist failure that begins to seal the fate of the gang. Through Arthur's lens, you experience what life was like in the gang during its peak to its eventual fall from grace. Like many people, I came into Red Dead Redemption 2 as a fan of the original Red Dead Redemption, and I was excited to see how this prequel would lend itself to the world built in the first. I was also excited to play as Arthur Morgan, the protagonist of this game, while hoping he would hold up to the character of John Marston from the first. Let me tell you, he not only holds up, he lifts John's character from the first on his shoulders and does a full half marathon past the mark of the first. Arthur Morgan is an incredibly nuanced character with a hell of a lot of depth and likability. Through the course of the story, you learn who Arthur is and you really relate to Arthur. The fact that you can take a low honor path and a high honor path also shapes your perception of Arthur a bit, but the overall course of the story remains unchanged in the grand scheme of things. It's heavily implied or explicitly illustrated through the action dialogue or Arthur's journal that Arthur is a bad man who's done some bad things throughout his nearly 15-year stint as a van der Linde. The writing, in combination with the nuance in voice acting and physical nonverbals, creates such a strong narrative experience that you truly feel and understand characters in this game. Also, the pacing of the story lends to the emotional impact of decisions and the different turns that occur during the narrative. In the first few chapters, most of the missions are fairly slow-paced and even mundane tasks that have you performing menial things, such as hunting deer or herding sheep. You know, typical tutorial missions. But they are more than just typical tutorial missions, because they serve as somewhat natural exposition of the characters and the situation they have found themselves in. With such a huge cast of characters, the use of these early missions to flesh out who they are and what the interpersonal context is masterfully puts you in the shoes of Arthur, but also gives you, the player, a connection to these stories. These early missions will occasionally be peppered with slight spikes in action, giving you an appetizer for a taste of what could be. Then, the action slowly rises, giving you a bit more of what you taste. Toward the climax of each chapter, you become fully immersed in a feast of intense action. This structure of juxtaposing mundane with the incredible serves the narrative well, because it's in this structure that you are given appreciation for each side of it. You appreciate the explosive action of full-town shootouts when you were herding sheep just missions before. Conversely, you value the one-on-one time of fishing with your companions after being chased by dozens of lawmen across the Great Plains. Also, the consistency of elevation of each chapter's climax really makes you want to push ahead through the story. With each successive chapter, the rising action from the chapter's beginning grows steeper, while the beginning point itself is higher in each narrative arc. The tension from the previous climax tends to loom longer and longer as each part goes by, until you finally reach the conclusion. Even the game's epilogue follows this well-orchestrated rise and fall. That isn't to say each chapter is great in the overall narrative, but they are all fun in the very least. Specifically, one of the penultimate chapters of the game seems a bit out of place when looking at the story up until that point, and even what follows. Even the stranger missions, essentially side quests in the game, add characterization to Arthur and the world overall. Introducing some interesting and memorable stories as well as characters, these missions add to the desire to explore and find what's under every rock and stone in the game. And with so many other unofficial missions and points to explore, the script of Red Dead Redemption 2 compels you to search for more, and when you've found what you were looking for, search again. It's this writing that really made me love this game. The simple fact that the game doesn't hold your hand and guide you through all the possible things that you can find sets Red Dead Redemption 2 apart from other open-world games. You're rewarded for going outside of the box, for following your curiosity, for paying attention to detail. There's this unexplainable feeling of accomplishment that you get when you have discovered something that's not spelled out for you, that's not a part of a mission strand, or it's not a part of some clue that some stranger gave you, but it's just something that you discovered, and it feels natural. It's this writing and this scripting that Red Dead Redemption 2 does so well. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a meticulously well-crafted game, with layers of depth in story and character, while remaining shallow in some areas of gameplay. The breadth of options in the world can give you many different tasks to keep you busy, but sometimes the given options do little more than give you something else to do. Though the story and the scale of the world more than make up for some of the shortcomings, the issues with the gameplay still exist, and they should be noted. At the end of the day, however, Red Dead Redemption 2 is a masterfully developed game, steeped in nuance and story and sound, detail through visuals, that is fun regardless of its faults in gameplay. In fact, the parts of excellence in this game shine so bright, the faults become negligible. I highly recommend Red Dead Redemption 2 to anyone who is a fan of the Western genre, exploration in a massive open world, or people who love playing through a great story with great characters. I would also recommend Red Dead Redemption 2 to anyone who is a fan of the original Red Dead Redemption. Rockstar has taken the formula from the first game, both from story, exploration, and gameplay, and they've expanded on it tenfold, creating one of the most anticipated gaming experiences of this generation, as well as creating one that will be spoken of in years to come. This one is definitely a treasure.
I'm going to where the sun burns and the heat stays in. Come and come lay by my side.